If you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. You got to change performance. Now, before you can change performance, you got to change your thinking. But before you can change your thinking, you've got to change what goes into your mind. I don't care how positive I got. For example, I could not whip a boxing champion or play basketball for an NBA basketball team or football for an NFL team. Positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it will let you do everything better than negative thinking will.
Zig Ziglar was one of the world's most popular motivational speakers. Ziglar was one of 12 children raised by a widowed mother during the Great Depression. He wrote over 25 books, including See You at the Top, and inspired millions of people around the world. In this exclusive training, Ziglar shares with us the power of positive thinking, how to reprogram your mind, and how to improve every aspect of your life. Special thanks to the Ziglar family for partnering with us to release this exclusive content on our YouTube channel. Enjoy.
Yes, life can be fun. It certainly can be exciting. As a matter of fact, I believe that you were born to win. Unfortunately, too many people have been conditioned to lose. The truth of the matter, though, is the fact that I believe you can be number one. Now, that doesn't mean I believe that everybody can be the biggest and the fastest and the strongest and the smartest, but I believe when you get up in the morning and look in that mirror and say, today, I'm going to do my very best, and then that day you do your best, and that evening you look back in the mirror and say, today, I did my best, I believe you are number one. Our basic problem in our society today is the tremendous amount of negative input in our minds. You see, the truth of the matter is you are what you are and you're where you are because of what has gone into your mind. And you can change what you are and change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. The problem is, as I indicated, we have too much of the negative input. For example, we talk about the terrible twos, when in reality, they're the terrific twos, the tremendous threes, the fantastic fours, the fabulous fives, the super sixes, the sensational sevens. Actually, you could take three babies, one born in Chicago, Illinois, one born in Shanghai, China, the other born in the upper Amazon, and you raise those babies there. And the baby born in China, because of the input, will grow up to be a communist. The baby born in the upper Amazon and raised there, because of the input, will believe in headhunters and witchcraft and voodoo and that sort of thing. Now, the baby born in Chicago and raised there is obviously going to grow up believing in the Chicago Bears. That's right. That input does make such a tremendous difference, but the input too often, as I said, is negative. I was in a cafeteria and a little girl in front of us was crying. A grandmother type lady leaned down and said, "What's the matter, honey?" And her daddy spoke up and said, "She's mean. That's what, she's just plain mean." I was up in Nashville, Tennessee on the way down to the gate to catch a plane. Passed a lady and a little 5-year-old boy, and as I was walking past, the little guy was dragging his heels. And the mother turned to him and said, "Come on, stupid, we're going to miss the plane." Now, what does that do to that child? What does it do to the image of the child and the optimism and enthusiasm of the child? I think you know the answer. My friend Bill Glass tells me that over 90% of the people in our prisons today and jails were repeatedly told by their parents, one of these days you're going to grow up and go to jail. He was sharing with me that at one of their association meetings, or revivals actually, there in a prison, he and Jim Glass, the champion catcher for the world's champion Kansas City Royals, were talking. And as they were chatting, Jim Sundberg, who had been told when he was 3 years old down in Stockton, California by his dad, "One of these days, son, you're going to grow up and be a great major league catcher." He told him that over and over. And Bill and Jim were talking, and Jim just shared with Bill, "You know, I'm sure glad that when I was a child, that my dad told me that when I grew up, I was going to be a world's champion catcher, because I am exactly where he said I was going to be." And an incarcerated man standing close by quietly but rather sadly said, Well, you know, I'm exactly where my dad told me I was going to be. You see, that input does make a dramatic difference. The good news is very simple. You do have some of every single quality which we've identified. But let me tell you something to think about. If you had $1 million in the bank, you'd never write a check on it if you did not know the money was in the bank. But the moment you discovered it was there, that's when the local economy would take a giant leap forward. And I've discovered that everybody everywhere seems to want exactly the same thing. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be healthy. They want to be at least reasonably prosperous. They want to be secure. They want to have friends, and they want to have peace of mind. Now think with me on this, please. If those are the things that you want, doesn't it make sense to take an inventory and see what you've got? And when you take that inventory and discover what you've got, if you discover that it's short of what you want, then surely it makes sense to you to discover and explore how you got what you got. And what you're going to discover is this: you've gotten the things you've gotten based on your performance. Now, the possible exception to that is money. Occasionally someone inherits that. I don't depend on it, but it can happen. All of the other things are based on your performance. So logically, if you want to change what you've got, doesn't it make sense that you've got to change your performance? Because you see, in the simplest term possible, if you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. You got to change performance. Now, before you can change performance, you got to change your thinking. Because you see, your thinking, regardless of what you do, has a dramatic impact on that performance. But before you can change your thinking, you've got to change what goes into your mind. And now we're back where we started. You're what you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind. And you can change what you are, you can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. Now I have in my hands a most unusual coin here. It is a piece of gold. It's a gold coin, therefore, custom made especially for me by a close friend. As you can see on this side, there's the arrow going up. See you at the top is what it's really saying. If you'll also notice, I have in my other hand another coin. It's a dime. Now these two coins, if they're placed at the bottom of the ocean, have exactly the same value. That is nothing because they're not being used. When you bring them to the surface, however, this gold coin is worth several $100s, whereas this one is still worth the dime. Now the difference really is what's in the coins, but the fact that we've now brought them to the surface to use them. In your own life, all of the qualities and values you have, unless you bring them to the surface and use them, they really won't have that value. Now on the other side of this custom-built coin, we have a rather unique little thing. If you look very carefully, you can read it says T-U-I-T. And since the coin itself is round, and since this is a to-it, this means this literally is a round to-it. Many times I've had people say to me, well, I'm going to do something just as soon as I get a round to-it.
Hey there, it's Mark Tim with the Ziglar family, and I sure hope you're enjoying the video from my mentor, the legendary Zig Ziglar. Because you're part of Evan's audience, we want to give you a special bonus. It's a cool little book called The Little Book of Big Quotes, packed with awesome content. This book is free just for you. Check out the description below, and it's yours. Alrighty, let's get you back to Zig.
Zig, you've stressed the importance of input, and it really makes sense, but where do we get the right kind of positive input?
Well, basically, Jim, we have a number of sources. The associates, the people we're with and around, certainly have an input. The people we work with, our families, all of these have inputs. Now, the question is it the correct input? A lot of times, unfortunately, the answer to that is no. So to compensate for the negative input, we have to deliberately seek the positive input. By that I mean we simply need to read the good books, the optimistic, positive thinking, powerful inputs into our mind. We need to listen to those recordings as we're driving to and from. The car can make a marvelous traveling educational institution. We need to listen while we're washing dishes or weeding the flower bed. We can do those things when we are, well, shaving or applying makeup. That's where we need to have that positive input.
Who are some of the people or kinds of people that have used the input you're talking about?
Well, I once made the statement that I had never known a self-made millionaire in the world of selling who did not have and use motivational input and have his own cassette recorder. I'm certain that that might not be true today because of the change in the economy. But by and large, successful people listen. I know H.L. Hunt, for example, listened until after he was 80 years old. Mary Kay Ash told me that she never started her car until she first made certain that she had a motivational or educational recording in the car. Alan Bean, one of the astronauts who walked on the moon, told me that the astronauts were listening to motivational recordings going back and forth from the moon. And I'm obviously pleased to be able to say that at least some of the recordings they were listening to were fantastic.
Zig, I heard you relate a story that I thought was really fascinating about a man by the name of Tom Hartman. Why don't you tell us about Tom?
That's probably the most remarkable story in many ways because in every area of his life, Tom needed help. He was financially bankrupt. He was spiritually bankrupt. He was physically bankrupt. He was socially bankrupt. And that might sound like a harsh word, but when I say bankrupt, I at least mean he was very in short supply. Tom had a 63.5-inch waistline, weighed 406 pounds. By his own admission, kind of had to maneuver in order to get eating money each week. He is coming off a devastating divorce, had not been in church in a number of years, educationally was stymied. He was going to college part-time, but it was just to fill his time. He got involved in listening to my set of tapes, and as Tom said, he said, Zig, I have listened to them so many times, particularly the one on self-image, that I can quote you verbatim. He said, I bet I've listened to that one over 500 times and the other tapes over 100 times. Well, it didn't happen overnight, but repetition is the mother of learning, and we need to be convinced that, yes, we can do these things. So to kind of round up the story, Tom Hartman today weighs in the vicinity of 200 pounds, which is acceptable because he's over 6 feet tall. He went back to college. He got his degree in psychology, graduated magna cum laude, and is working on his doctorate. Has his own business and is happier actually than I've ever seen Tom before. He's teaching a Sunday school class. His personal life, his family life, his business life, his spiritual life, they've all come together. Now I want to stress this was not an easy thing. It involved many, many months for Tom to do all of these things. And I'll be the first to admit that this is an extreme example. But we have literally hundreds, even thousands of examples where when people change the input in their mind, they dramatically altered all facets of their life.
Wow, Zig, that is really motivating, but I guess the question that follows is motivation permanent?
Well, the answer to that, Jim, is no. Motivation is not permanent, but then neither is bathing. But it is something which we should do very regularly. For that matter, eating is not permanent, but it's something we've got to do every day. Now, it'd be absurd to think that you could hear one positive speech or read one positive book and go through the rest of your life completely motivated. It's something you work at every day.
And Zig, some people say that it's easy. I've heard speakers say that with a positive attitude, you can do anything. How do you respond to that?
I'd say right off the top of my head, that's insane. I don't care how positive I got. For example, I could not whip a boxing champion or play basketball for an NBA basketball team or football for an NFL team. I don't care how positive I got, I couldn't run General Motors with just positive thinking. I couldn't even take your appendix out with just positive thinking. No, positive thinking won't let you do anything but it will let you do everything better than negative thinking will. I'll tell you exactly what positive thinking will let you do. It will let you use the ability which you have. And when you use what you've got, my friend, that is sufficient to improve dramatically every phase of your life.
Now, Zig, you and the audience went on to list 27 success qualities. But in the interest of time, how about summarizing what you're getting at with that activity?
Well, what we were doing there is finding out from them, obviously, what's necessary in their opinion to be successful. And we then asked a question after we'd listed all 27 of those qualities, and that question was, are these attitudes or are they skills? And we discovered that all 27 of them actually involved attitude. Then I asked the question, well, how many of you had a course in school which taught you how to develop these attitudes? And as is my custom all over the country, when I asked that question, less than 1% of them held up their hands. And that kind of sounds like an indictment on the educational system, but I went ahead to point out to them that the average student in America goes to school 5 days a week, 180 days a year, 6 hours a day. That means they're in school 1,080 hours, but there are 8,760 hours in a year. So what that means is that they're at home a little over 1,000 hours. They're in What that really means then is that they're in school a little over 1,000 hours. They're at home over 7,600 hours. And mom and dad have had the child over 40,000 hours before the teachers ever see them. Then I asked the audience if they didn't think that parents should accept just a little bit of the responsibility. So I'm not indicting the educational system. What I'm saying is we've got a societal problem, and all of us, therefore, as part of society, must accept our share of the responsibility. And then I kind of asked him the question, how many of you believe that if these qualities were taught at home and then reinforced in school, that we'd have a better America? And you can well imagine they all responded enthusiastically to that. Because you see, when a child or an individual develops honesty, character, and integrity, and faith, and love, and loyalty, and dependability, and enthusiasm, and a positive mental attitude, when they develop all of those, including trust and loyalty and what have you, that individual will be accepted in any society, anywhere. They can get in any school, any college, any job market will be open to them. In other words, here is a rare individual. Then the exciting part came when I pointed out that actually every single person has some of all of these qualities.
To watch another amazing Zig Ziglar video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
For 24 years of my adult life, I weighed well over 200 pounds. I say by choice because, you see, I have never accidentally eaten anything.